What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 297. And I'm one of the co-hosts. My name is Steve, and I'm here with
Ron
and John.
Guys, it's good to see you for another week in a row. It's the streak goes on.
Yeah.
We keep doing it. You know what I've noticed is nobody's stopping us.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's
so
true.
We just keep doing it. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Sure.
I think Starship said it best when they said nothing's going to stop us now. Is that right? I don't know.
You know, that sounds overconfident. I would rewrite that to be nothing seems to be trying to stop us at the moment.
Give it time. We'll figure out what's going to stop us.
Right. Something might. That's why
probably Ronald's logic. His application
my
is
logic
not working.
is demonic. And fucking...
People don't know that when two of us are talking on the podcast, the other one is looking around to see if anything's trying to stop us, and then we kind of trade off like that.
Yeah.
It's like
we do it in shifts.
Yeah.
Back to back, like Lethal Weapon, just kind of
see if it's doing this.
Look out!
Yeah, the other guys are talking.
Yep.
Oh man!
So today's episode is going to be a little bit of a mixed bag. We're going to kind of catch up and talk a little bit about Mortal Kombat, which a couple of us have seen, which came out last week on HBO Max. Another one of their day and date hits. I guess I'll say hits.
Yeah.
Both that come out on the HBO Max streaming platform and theatrically where theaters are up and running. And then we're going to kind of end out the episode with just kind of a talk about the Oscars, the 93rd Oscars, which aired this past weekend. And, we'll get around to that towards the end. But to start the episode like we usually do, anything news related that you guys want to bring up? I know I have one little thing I took a note of the other day that I wanted to make sure I brought up on the podcast, but I'll let you guys go first if you have anything you want to bring up.
I don't know if I have anything that's just burning a hole in my brain. So
Are you serious?
Yeah, typically I have something. No.
Not new, not really news, but what do you guys think of the Westside Story trailer?
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, it looks
great.
Looks great.
Looks great,
yeah.
Right?
I mean, when you heard Spielberg was doing that, you sort of pictured, I bet that's going to look great. And then you see the trailer and it does. So, I mean, I think that it was big. It's a big night. I think next year's going to be a big year for musicals. I feel like the Oscars next year better put a little spring in their step because there's going to be at least a couple big musicals next year.
Yeah, I mean, this year you have that. You have In the Heights, which is another of HBO's day and date releases for those interested. And then also this year's Dear Evan Hansen's supposed to come out, which is going to be, I think, a contender as well. So yeah, three pretty huge titles, musicals coming out theatrically and in streaming in some way. So yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think that may be an interesting ceremony next year. Spoiler alert, maybe more so than this year. But I don't know. The trailer looked great. I think, that the way they dropped it during the ceremony this year for the Oscars was pretty smart. But yeah, I mean, fans of Spielberg, fans of the original, fans of musicals, it just seems really well cast. And just the production design and everything just looks like just insane. It looks like movie magic. It really does. And I thought that trailer looked great. But the one news thing that I wanted to mention to you guys, I don't know if you use Rokus. I know we've talked about them before. Maybe you had used it a little bit, John, maybe tried one, but I got an email from Roku, which I think they sent to all their users on Monday. And this is kind of making the rounds Monday into yesterday, but basically they had sent a email out to their user base, basically saying that there's a high likelihood that I, a user of Roku, would no longer be able to access my YouTube TV subscription on the platform anymore. That basically the negotiations between YouTube or Google and Roku have broken down, and basically, they've used words like Google having predatory and monopolistic behavior, basically the terms negotiating, stalling because of the way that Google wants to handle the data that they collect off of the Roku platform, and et cetera, et cetera. Of course, then YouTube comes back and issues a statement saying that, they're trying to negotiate with Roku, and that, Roku does this often where they kind of, make it public what negotiations are happening. And I think they did sort of do that a little bit, maybe not in an email to their user base, like with the HBO Max deal and everything like that before that came on the platform. But I just thought it was really interesting because apparently it's supposed to happen within the next couple of days. Somebody, a couple articles saying between like this week, there's a change between months, and usually that's contracts are ending at the end of this week or something. So I'd be curious because I mean I do use YouTube TV on my Roku, and that would really suck if it was no longer available on my Roku. As is most case with this kind of things, like they usually work it out, but it seems to be becoming a more and more common thing that these platforms, especially ones that have the really high user base counts, don't seem to be willing to, they seem to be having more negotiating power than some of the apps do. Like the whole HBO thing and like the Warner Media, conversation, how it took so long for it to get to, Amazon and like the Roku devices. It just seems like these platforms really do have a lot of power. And it was really interesting to me to get an email from Roku, not only telling me what was happening, but the last paragraph of the email was a call to action, basically asking Roku users to contact Google about wanting to continue to use the YouTube TV app on my Roku platform, obviously to help them get whatever terms they want to get through.
So they're basically saying, write your senator.
Basically, yeah. And first name Google, last name .com.
Senator Google.
Yeah. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, I know Ronald, you don't really use the device. I don't know if you ever messed with them, John. But
I have one.
Oh, you do have one. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were across the board Apple TV stuff, but
so I'm a big. I test everything. I don't know what I tell you. It's kind of in past. Just because, there's a reason. I mean, we could talk about this at some point, but there's a reason why Apple TVs cost what they do. They perform a little differently than they do on smart TVs and stuff like that. Right. I mean, I use YouTube TV on everything. I use it on my PlayStation. I use it on my Xbox. I use it on my TV. I use it on my Apple TVs. I use it on my iPads. I use it.
Geez, humble brag about all the devices.
Slow the brakes, bro.
No. But it's an important app. But what I was gonna say was it is my cable. It is my cable.
No, I use it the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have my preferences for streaming, but I would never want you to not have a thing. I want everybody to have the same access on every device. And Roku seems to be having these arguments more and more. And I think that it's a couple of things. Like, I think you should be fighting for your right to have things on your terms, right? But some of it is
to party.
Yeah, it's a party. But is it worth that all the time? Like, it feels like this has happened a couple of times with them, where it feels like there's these crazy ass roadblocks where it's like, all right, man, like, who are you? I'm standing up for the little guy. Like, I get it. I want them to win, but if I had a Roku set up like you do, I would be fucking furious.
Right.
I'd be fucking furious because especially if that's your cable, if that's your cable box, if that's your means to watch TV, news.
Yeah, it's basically used for mainly for like local, local stations and some cable stations I watch sometimes. I very rarely watch any kind of live TV, but it is a really great app. And I mean, I think YouTube TV is pretty impressive for the price point. But I just think that, I think in general, it doesn't really worry me a whole lot, only because the precedent seems that like there may be a little bit of delay or there may be a little bit of like stalemate, but they do seem to kind of come around and figure shit out. But it does seem to be something that's happening more and more. And I think it really is because the platforms, especially the Roku platform, it is like an industry leader. You know what I mean? I think that they're in terms of pure units, it's just so many people use them. And I think they're getting more and more confident in their ability to negotiate these things, or like, in this case, I think it's that, YouTube is basically they're saying that YouTube is trying to like leverage the way that like search results are parsed to favor YouTube, and that, that's questionable, I guess, on Roku's end, because, if they drive more things to YouTube and the terms are worse with YouTube, Roku's not making as much money as if search results were leading to other apps that they make more money off of, you know what I mean? Or whatever. like other alternatives to YouTube TV, like what like Sling or things like that, like, you know, these other options that are out there. But I don't know, interesting. I mean, by the time this podcast comes out, they may have all figured it out, hopefully. But it's just another example of, like, you know, just a very public fight about, you know, being able to keep an app in a store somewhere.
Well, I'm intrigued by that notion of Roku being somebody who takes their fight public, or who hangs their dirty laundry in public. But I mean, it's like that might be a factor to why we are hearing about. It could be that Roku's kind of the tip of the spear for some of these problems, you know, because of the fact that they do have like a pretty big share of the market, and they do have to have deals with all these other providers, the studios, and the you know, now that everybody's got their own outlet and their own app and their own everything. So I think that's interesting, that maybe Roku's got a little bit of a scrappy quality to them, which again, I haven't observed it enough to know if that's true. But the other thing I think is just interesting, or maybe just sits on my mind, is that, like, it stresses me out to think of all these companies, the little deals, and the fact that, like, we've already talked about it, the notion of how many services do you have to subscribe to, how many things do you have to have, how many devices do you have to keep on hand, and it's like these people not playing nicely together always stresses me out. It just makes me think, oh, what's going to be the thing in the future that's hard to finagle, or again, hard. I talk about something that's a very good problem to have, but it's just, you know, as bad as cable was, and as much as they gouged you, you did just make that payment, and that was that. And you got the stuff, and you didn't have to worry as much. I mean, every now and then there would be two companies that couldn't agree, but it was much more in the vein of what you said, Steve, of like, well, they're going to work this out because this is too big, and you know, whatever. So I don't know. It just makes me wonder, like, how many more stories like that are there just going to be as we get more and more dependent on this spread out array of providers and services and so forth.
For sure.
So I have family in the Carolinas, and they give people Rokus. Those are the cable boxes.
People catch them there, like in the street.
They just. So the Rokus are the cable boxes for all those services now. So you open up the Spectrum app on the device, and when you connect to their home network, it automatically signs you in, and that's it. Like, so if they give you a thing that's supposed to do everything, and it doesn't access certain things, I feel like you're at a disadvantage, especially if your TV smart but isn't quite as good as a Roku app, because like a native Roku is going to run 4K better than a lot of stuff.
For sure.
It's gonna you know, you have the Apple TV app. A lot of older smart TVs don't run the Apple TV app. It's like things like that. So you want it to be a one-stop shop. And you pay your money for it. You want these services to be
I don't know. We'll see. Just thought it was pretty interesting.
All right,
get over here.
Sorry, real quick before we go over there, best summer ever.
I'll cue you, John.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry. Best summer ever, the disability sort of heavy duty, great representation film is on PVOD now. Best summer ever.
We saw that at South by
Southwest. Yep. Incredible.
It was great.
It has a lot. It's like, would you consider it a musical?
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's got elements enough to somebody could. I mean, so it qualifies.
There's more than 2 songs in it. So,
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So Best Summer Ever is a great film that's worth checking out, and it just best example of disability representation. Check it out, please. Best Summer Ever.
Go, John. Go, John.
Get over here.
You did it, John. You're so good. You did it.
Really
so
good.
I haven't seen the movie, so that was really my one contribution.
I was like, that's us getting you in here. This is you getting involved. So Mortal Kombat. Ronald, what did you think?
I thought it was fun, man.
Yeah.
I have a problem, and I have to voice it. When people come to Earth, I'm normally done with the script. Like, it's like when Sonic come into the real world.
I put that statement together.
But I thought that was until you saw the sci-fi genre with Oblivion. You were like, before Oblivion introduced me to what science fiction was, I was out.
Until Mr. Thomas Mapother Cruz invented the sci-fi genre in, what was it, 2012,
yeah.
2014 or something.
It's like a real pet peeve of mine, man. Like when you I don't know why they do it. It's like, you know, what'd be cool if this character from a video game or a cartoon was in on Earth walking around between cars.
You mean like in the old Masters of the Universe movie, the way it like takes place in Los Angeles or something like that? Like, yeah, no, that's like a ripoff. That's like a ripoff.
Almost killed me when it happened. You know, when they were like walking in between the cars, I'm like, I'm done with this movie. Then they start flipping. I'm like, oh, okay, I like.
You're like, I'm not done. I'm in.
I'm back here.
Look, if you have people come to Earth, I'm out. But if you have them flip cars, I'm in.
Right.
I'm in.
Especially if it's like
two of his pet peeves.
You know?
That's the balance that Ronald has with cinema.
It bothers me so bad, man. It's like Sonic would have been a better movie if it just took place in his world, and they would have just done it like, you know, special effects and stuff. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, but
just have Ben Schwartz, no animated character in the animated world.
Just flip it. And then a paper cutout of Sonic just.
And he's just like throwing it up in the air to spin it real quick. Like he's got like a Sonic Pog and he's just flipping it.
I would watch that. I mean,
I think we should watch that.
I like Ben Schwartz.
So good.
But yeah, it's like it's very fun. I mean, you know, I think what I said, I don't know if I said it on the podcast last week or when we were off podcast recording. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the biggest concern I had going into it was the fact that I'd heard that like there's no tournament in the movie.
Yeah.
Which I still don't know that I love that there's not. But when you watch the movie, you kind of easily, and there's no spoiler in this at all. But like you quickly pick up that like there's intent for this to not be a movie. Like there's an intent for this to be a franchise or a trilogy, which, you know, should just go without saying. But you know, when you see what's going on with the story, which is just simply that, you know, our villains in the game or in the story are basically trying to take out the heroes before the tournament even starts. You know, like that's the plot of this movie. And eventually you kind of like get on board with it and it's fun. And like, if you're a fan of the game series, which is one of the last games that I was ever super, super into, you know, you definitely, there's definitely stuff here to see that is worth watching, especially, you know, the 1995 movie, you know, a lot of people are fans of it. And I kind of like that movie. It's just, you know, it kind of suffered from the whole PG-13 of it all, especially for a game that's so brutal and violent. So, you know, this movie being rated R, you definitely got a little bit of a reward if you are looking for, you know, the fatalities that you didn't get in 95, because there's a couple really cool ones and, you know, that kind of pays off. But, you know, it's kind of a silly movie. Like it's kind of crazy that Warner Brothers is, you know, starting this franchise from, you know, a beloved, super popular video game series. And like, it's just one of those situations where it's like, there's a screenwriter and a director who this is like the first thing that they've done. Yeah. And it's just like you question that, I think. And that's kind of what happens with a lot of these video game adaptations, is that like a lot of them maybe fail, not because, you know, the property can't be adapted properly to be a movie, but like a lot of times it's kind of similar to that, where like the people involved with it or who it is able to attract maybe is, you know, kind of like starting out, you know, people starting out with their career, or like jumping from commercials or like, you know, music video, you know, direction, which sometimes works out and sometimes doesn't. But looking at the IMDb for this and like kind of looking into the production for it, it's like kind of wild to me that such a big budget movie is coming off of a screenwriter and a director who, like, this is literally like their first major feature film period, which is wild. But I don't know. Overall, I thought it was pretty fun. I mean, there's some nitpicky, you know, and I don't even know if it's worth doing it, but like, you know, the whole, what's his name? What's the lead's name? Joe Cole, or the main guy that like you're following, like our proxy for the whole story.
Yeah.
Whatever his name, like whoever Louis Tan plays. That whole, the idea of introducing a like non-game character to kind of be our proxy for Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. Yet
he is somehow involved in Mortal Kombat. I don't know that all works, but maybe that's like a plan for the whole trilogy of to see who that character becomes. Maybe somebody different, or maybe somebody we will recognize, but I don't know what else to say. I mean, basically everything that everybody said about the trailer is what the movie is. Like, you know, some awesome fucking kills, some awesome fighting. Like there's really some really cool fighting choreography in it. You know, Sub-Zero turning blood into an ice knife and then stabbing the guy with his own blood ice knife. Like that's
so good.
That's pretty awesome. Like that's an all-timer, you know, that's an all-timer.
Even if you got that way, you'd be like, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, you know what? I can't be mad. You took my blood, you froze it, you turned it into a knife.
The last, like, I'd say 4 games have been like super duper story heavy to the point where, like, if you look on YouTube, you could watch them all and it's a movie. Like, and I'd say 10 and 11 were probably the ones that are probably the most similar to the storyline, where they're just kind of traveling through portals, beating the shit out of each other, going to the netherworld. It's most similar to, I'd say, 10 and 11 in terms of the storyline, but they've changed the characters and stuff, and it's not exact. But I thought it was fun, man. Like the thing is, if you're buying into people coming from the netherworlds and people with 4 arms, like what would you expect this to be but a B movie with some cool special effects if it has the funding and, you know, the right team and a solid story. I thought that the changes that they made were pretty cool, like the tournament kind of tattoo thing.
Oh, the
like
the
marking.
symbol. Yeah.
So I thought it was cool, stuff like that was pretty cool. I mean, I thought that the story dragged a little bit, but once it picked up, once the action started, I was in there. But okay, can you answer me a question? Scorpion is from Japan and speaking Japanese, subtitles the whole time.
Yeah.
He goes to hell and he's like, "Get over here," in the most American accent you could possibly ever happen. So are they telling us that this is a commentary that the US is hell? That when you start speaking English, I don't understand.
That's the language you inherit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the English, you know, it's the you know, every place has sort of like a preferred language for that place. Hell just is like, let's just go ahead and make American the, you know, the pop.
Yeah,
we already have the numbers down there.
it's like the way that everybody in space has a British accent for some reason.
Yes, that's
so everybody in hell is just like, "Hey, guy, what are you doing? I'm the devil. I speak English." That makes sense.
Yeah. There's a few of those moments in the movie where it's just like, I don't know what's going on really or why that's happening, but
but
then the next scene is like some cool fight and you're like, okay, well, there's the cool fight I was looking for.
Does it feel like it's built well to be a franchise starter? I hate to hear myself say that, but I mean, does it feel like they know what they're doing, or they might know, you know, like right now everybody's trying to do this. Everybody's trying to take these big properties and do this.
Yeah.
Like turn them into more than just a movie. So you're saying, yes, it does feel like like confident enough that maybe what people are waiting for, the tournament storyline, whatever, might be coming in a future movie or something they're building up to.
Right? Yeah.
I think so. What do you think, Ronald?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think they planted enough here just with the idea of what the Mortal Kombat tournament is, and just this literally just feels like the first act of something. You know what I mean? That has a couple cool fights. Like it's literally just setting up the rules of like, when is the tournament? Who participates in it? You know, what are some of the rules? And the fact that, you know, they're breaking the rules and who's enforcing that? Nobody. You know, like no one's going to stop. You know, so I think it does a good job of just doing that. And I mean, it introduces enough characters. The only thing I think probably fails is that like a lot of the villain characters that we meet in this one, they kind of get knocked off pretty easily. And I don't know that can maintain if they want to get 3 movies out of this. But yeah, I think there's enough there that I think almost immediately you're like, okay, I mean, I can say, you know, in 2 years there's going to probably be another Mortal Kombat movie coming out, you know, and they even tease at the end where it's going, you know, which I think is kind of fun, and especially for fans of the game, especially prior the era that I followed. I did not make it to like, you know, what you were describing, like the last couple releases, like where it kind of entered a story mode. I'm all just I was all in the versions where it was just full versus combat, like it was no story mode there. But one of the more popular characters that's missing from this movie is teased at the end of this movie, which is like something that I'm sure fans of the series would be excited for in a sequel for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you guys are presenting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ronald.
I was gonna say movie schmovie fact. Did you know that a lot of the characters in Mortal Kombat are based on characters from Big Trouble in Little China?
Oh, that makes sense.
I feel like I didn't know that for sure.
It was
but
like a huge inspiration.
I can totally
I did
picture
see
those
that
like
somewhere.
elemental warriors that kind of come out. They have the different powers.
The guys with the lightning are like Raiden. They change it slightly. There's like a character with kind of a similar Kung Lao sort of thing that
the brimmed hat. Yeah,
the brimmed hat. So like it's kind of all over their movie. I actually recently watched. Yeah, so that's movie schmovie fact for you.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you guys for giving me a take on this movie that isn't what I've been seeing online, which is either, oh, I'm 5 minutes in and this movie sucks ass, and then the other side is, I don't care what people say, I had fun. And I haven't seen anybody that's not salty about this movie. Even the people that like it are salty. So you guys are giving me a nice again, I think that, we said this about Godzilla versus Kong. When a movie is kind of aware of what it is and what it's trying to deliver, and it delivers on some level, like you said, Steve, a certain number of fight scenes, certain number of gory finishing moves. And it's like, what more did you want from this movie? If you're really going, oh, they didn't get to the tournament, or they didn't base it on this game or whatever. I feel like, I mean, if there's enough there for them to expand on, or especially if they're getting this, according to their accounts that they've released, it's an even bigger response than Godzilla versus Kong got, right? On the service.
On the service, I think on the platform, I want to say
not box office, but
it still outperformed at the box office, that the projections and the HBO Max numbers that they released, I want to say, were bigger than the Godzilla vs Kong.
Is everything they put out bigger than everything? I
think
feel
so.
Like that's always the story with HBO. Are they just gaining traction, or is it actually okay?
Yeah, I do think so. Yeah, I mean, is this movie a flawless victory? No, but it does have an awesome one in the movie.
Okay. Yeah.
It does have an awesome one in the movie. I will say that.
Like,
did they finish him?
The problem is you want certain people to stay around for the whole movie.
I know.
And it's some surprises, man. It's like,
I know.
The action is it's like Mortal Kombat. You just never know.
Never know
who's gonna go.
You're suggesting people are dying during this combat? Ronald?
Yes.
They should warn us.
Yeah.
There's a moment of silence.
It was for the ones that passed away.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's a good segue to the Oscars, because we're going to have our moment. We should have the little in memoriam reel for all the people that died in Mortal Kombat.
I would love that.
But yes, the Oscars, an attempt to do something different. The ceremony, they weren't going to do a Zoom thing this year, so they opted for something in between, like a socially distanced version of the Oscars, and something that I kept hearing the word more intimate. I kept hearing the phrase like over the shoulder, or more like a movie. What did you guys think of this year's Oscars ceremony? The structure of it.
Who's gonna go first? I don't want to cut run on.
We don't like to speak ill of the dead on this show.
No, I mean, I wasn't a fan. I mean, just to be blunt, I mean, there were some things about it that I did like. Like, I kind of really actually liked the way it started. Like, I think when you see somebody like Steven Soderbergh's involved with producing it, and you get like this long tracking shot of Regina King walking in, like, oh wow, that's Soderbergh right there, and you're like, okay, is this going to feel like cool like that? Exactly. Is it going to feel like quick like that, and kind of more modern like that? But I think once you got past like the first couple categories, that kind of stopped. But I don't know, like it just felt really kind of flat to me. And I mean, I kept saying, and it was completely an aesthetic look to me. It was like, I don't understand why like they had it at Union Station. Like, if like the idea was like socially distanced and like it had large ceilings or whatever, like, so does the theater that it was usually held in. But a weird thing that bothered me was like how bright the ceremony was. Like, there was something odd about like all those windows being there. And I know that some people enjoyed that or liked that because it kind of made it feel like it was more open. But I kind of just had the opposite reaction, where like it kind of just made me feel like I was like watching like a conference or something. Like it didn't feel as like intimate. And I guess I just had like the opposite reaction to that aesthetic choice. Like, it felt less intimate to me, less kind of like prestigious. and a little more just kind of like casual and I don't know, generic. I don't know. Just in general, most of the night just didn't work for me. I don't know if you want to go kind of through certain things or not, but just the pacing of it all. And I think we've talked about this before, like the lack of a host and, really poorly timed or paced comedic bits or portions of the broadcast to kind of keep it moving just seemed to be really missing. And those that were there kind of still missed in ways and more ways than not. But I don't know. What was your overall, before we kind of like get into certain things we want to kind of pick apart, but what did you guys think about it in general?
Ron?
I didn't hate it. Something was odd about the first 20 minutes. It looked very cinematic, and then it just went back to the regular format.
Right.
It did look really cool. Like I got uncomfortable a little bit. I'm like, Aaron, is the whole thing gonna be like this? It looks a little too like, I don't know. Like I'm uncomfortable with it. Like it was done in film or something. Like I was like, this doesn't. I don't like this look. And then it changed back, and then it felt like yeah, it definitely felt like the foreign press. Like it felt like,
yeah,
that's what that feels like. That's why that's separate to me. Like that feel when the foreign press is giving out awards, it feels a lot less not prestigious, because it is prestigious. It just, there's a tradition of it feeling almost like a ball for the Oscars.
Right.
And it didn't feel like that. It felt very, very much like the foreign press was going to come and the guy was going to give the speech in the middle of it with subtitles on the bottom. It just didn't feel quite as professional, as put together. I did like that. I mean, people hated it. Some people loved it. I liked the music section with Lil Rel when he was going around asking people if they knew the songs. And Glenn Close with I can't tell if it was memorized or not, because that was so
absolutely
oddly specific.
Very in on it, memorized,
highly scripted, but she's cool.
But she's all in on it,
right?
Yeah.
No, she's not.
She's
Yeah, right. Like no one's taking away cool points from Glenn Close just because she needed some prep time for that, because that's just showmanship. Right. I mean, that's just them having bits prepared,
Sure.
But I do think I've heard the phrase debut more in the last couple of days than I had.
I'm sure their
prior 10 years.
I'm sure their downloads have gone through the roof.
Yeah. Everybody likes butts.
Yeah.
But no, I guess I might be somewhere between you guys or something. I don't know. To me, I'm not expecting so much greatness. Like, I feel like this is a constant thing. We're always going to say, I mean, until they figure something out, we're always going to say, boy, this was kind of a drag, or why was this so long? Or was this, I think this year there were a few things which I imagine we're leading up to. We'll get to some of the bigger things that happened during the ceremony, some of the surprises. But I feel like some of those structural things, you mentioned the lack of a host, Steve. And I see so many people that have said, oh, I love, this was my favorite. Every year, it seems like them doing different things. And this year is no different. People on my feed, people on my social media are saying, I loved this. I think this is great. This is the way they should do it. So obviously it's just, mileage is going to vary.
Sure.
But I feel like some of those awkward moments that become the story the next day and the next day and the next day, a lot of that stuff would be smoothed over if you had that confident hand of a host. I mean,
Definitely.
We don't necessarily need them coming out making jokes every 2 seconds, but in some of those moments, it might be nice to have someone who can come out and deliver that stuff with some, Jimmy Kimmel's done it well. It doesn't have to be like Hollywood royalty that does it. It can be one of these people that just knows how to keep a show moving.
Right.
So I don't know. To me, I feel like it was a little dry. It was a little drab. It was it was not a fun experience to sit down and watch the whole thing. But of course, you're also looking for those little moments and those, I don't know. It still has some of that shine, but this year felt the most like I was watching a televised version of like the Independent Spirit Awards or the Cable Ace Awards or so. I don't know. Not to knock those ceremonies, but it just felt like something about the size of it, rather than feeling intimate, as they said, felt kind of low rent or thrown together, which I don't know that, to me, that was much better. Like I feel like the Emmys, I think the Emmys, they're the one who did all the Zoom awards and stuff, right? I feel like that still came off better to me, and it came off with a little bit more life and in a weird way more memorable. This felt like a weird attempt to deny
that's it. That's very
not
good
just
point.
what's happening in the world, but what we expect from the Oscars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of hard to. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, and I think that's because, like, they're they're acknowledging it nonstop during the broadcast in different ways and how they're speaking about the world that we're in now. But then in the same voice, like, they're only allowing people to participate if they win, if they're there in person or if they're at one of the satellite, Academy, motion picture, like the MPAs, like if they're at one of the offices in, like, I think it was like London or Dublin or something, where they had people coming to do like remote satellites if they happen to win an award. So I mean, it's just like it's like a weird mashup of like trying to make it feel, it's admirable, I guess, because like they're trying to make it feel as normal as possible. But I mean, what's normal anymore? I think it's just like it's just trying to make it fit something that maybe it can't fit right now. But hopefully next year, if the world's back to whatever the new normal looks like, the ceremony can kind of maybe iron out some of this stuff. But I think all that said, I mean, the big takeaway for me the entire night, with all the criticisms I have of the show, the production itself, the reality of, just it being like the most diverse Oscars ever is like the silver lining of the evening. Like you look across the categories, not only who was nominated, but like who ended up taking home awards. It's just a really encouraging, it's a very optimistic, positive outlook for, what Hollywood is looking like now. And, the ideas of diversity and representation, and just like, when you start to see the body of the Academy being built up to look more like the body of what Hollywood looks like, or this country even, I think you really start to feel it when you see awards being handed out that seem a lot more representative of, what people want to see and what people respond to in the movies that they choose to watch. So like, that was a really great thing to see how diverse the winner pool was this year, and to see people up on stage accepting awards of every different background, like the most ever in Academy history, is just a very positive thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think, okay, so to add to John's point, man, if the communities most affected by COVID are poor people, poor minorities, and just poor people in general, to ignore something that's affecting those people is also a misdirect. It's fucking, it's inconsiderate a little bit. Well, not even a little bit, a lot of it. Because I don't want to always feel like the Oscars are just for people who have the financial means to see every single movie. I still talk to people, well, I did when I was out and about, and they find out that I did a podcast. They, people would be like, hey, you watch movies. I don't know any of the Oscar shit. Tell me some good stuff to watch. And I could pick out things that they may not want to, they may not typically watch, like maybe Nomadland, that's now accessible on Hulu or something like that. And I'm just saying that, like, ignoring something that has decimated a population of people who don't have the means to do what we did, to isolate the way that we could, to vaccinate the way that we could, there's a lot of people I know that can't do it that way. So I can't help but think about where I came from, which is there, and that makes me think that this whole thing feels a little like short-sighted, a little.
You mean the fact that they're like acting like there's not a pandemic happening still?
Yes, still acting like there's not a pandemic still, and saying you must be here to be involved with the people risking their health to get there, even. It's
yeah. And they kind of balked it. They kind of balked at that to begin with, because like they announced initially that there'd be no kind of special remote stuff, like it was an all in-person thing. And then people started pushing back, and then I think that's when they opened up the satellite things, the opportunities to accept awards or to be able to like introduce stuff remotely. So I mean, like that was them dealing with that problem, which is like a talent problem, not a viewership problem like you're describing. But the irony and part of what you just said is like, I like the idea that people don't have the means to watch the movies that are nominated for Oscars like before the Oscars is almost the opposite of like the Oscars viewership, like why the viewership is so important to them, because it's really the back end boost of like what the viewers, what it does. It's like it's like what you look at this week and you see movies like, you know, Nomadland or like Minari or Another Round, you know, like their video on demand stuff going like 200% up, you know, like that's really, that's why they want the viewership there. And like this year's viewership being, I think, the lowest ever, you know, is like down 58% from last year, which was even low itself. That is what that's a bad thing for them and for the industry, because, you know, only having 9 million versus 20 million people watching this, you know, the after effect of the awareness of titles that they've never heard of, or like the awareness of the movie that they saw a clip of that they really liked the clip. Oh, I'm going to seek that out. Well, if only 9 million versus 20 million are watching it, it's not going to help those movies, and it's not going to help the studio in the end either. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a part of the irony, is that like, I think a lot of what they rely on, not only the numbers for like to boast how many people watched it, but it's really like they're promoting these movies during the broadcast, you know, and they want people to find it after the fact. And, you know, when people aren't watching the broadcast like it was this year with such low numbers, it's like, you know, the movies are still finding a boost, but it's like, you know, nowhere near what it could have been had it been a better broadcast.
Well, I mean, like, what's, you know, the Super Bowl and then this, as far as like,
that's it. I mean, those are the two.
People see commercials and trailers and stuff like, and you associate it with kind of like, it's a big, you would peg that trailer, and it's true that I've heard people talking about the trailers. I mean, you know, we've mentioned those in the Heights and Westside Story. So I don't know. To me, it's like, a lot of those things are just always going to be what they are, but the viewership doesn't seem to really be there. The craze for it doesn't really seem to be there. I feel like it is at an all-time low. People's investment in this stuff is at an all-time low. But the cynicism I think about it, and also just the kind of acknowledgement of everything you were just saying, Ronald, I just think that sometimes people don't find this that important or that relatable or something. And if the show is not doing something to bring people in, I mean, again, I think there are different ways, different years that there's a performer or a movie or just something in the air that makes it, a host maybe, that makes it like an exciting idea to watch the show. But I just don't think there was any, we were talking about it actually before this last weekend, that it just didn't feel like it was Oscar weekend.
There's no build up
at all. And it has felt sort of less and less like it's a huge deal on the kind of cultural scale. But this year, even more so, it just kind of felt like, oh yeah, I don't know anybody that's really talking about it. I think in the days after, you sort of could see, okay, people are, I think a lot of people, you notice in the run up, a couple days before, you see people that are trying to have seen all of the big Oscar movies. And then you see a couple days after people talking about stuff. But that was, you know, it just doesn't, I don't know. This year, it doesn't seem like it kind of cracked the consciousness. And I think if you were wondering about that, going, what are they going to do to keep viewers? And then you see this show, it's like, well, this wasn't it. This wasn't the thing that's going to reinvigorate the idea of the whole thing.
And I mean, I think next year will be a different beast altogether. I mean, hopefully they'll learn from some of this, and I think, you know, try to reconfigure what this broadcast can be and what this event can be for people. Like, you know, once we get in some way back to movies, and like, you know, the idea of seeing some blockbusters nominated for Oscars, you know, that pulls viewers in. Like you're saying, a host that could pull viewers in. I mean, to think of what it could have been or would have been, you know, like the last big name, like Kevin Hart, you know, being attached to an Oscar, like that's like, he's one of the biggest names out there, you know, like that would have been an interesting thing to watch, to see what that could have done for the Oscars in terms of the viewership. But I think, you know, next year will be very interesting to see what it looks like, to see basically, you know, half of a year likely still reeling from the pandemic restraints. And then, you know, this summer, Memorial Day kicks off a new version of what theaters look like and what movies are coming out. You know, the second half of the year, there'll be a lot more stuff coming out. And like, you may see things entering an Oscar race that we didn't even, you know, that you didn't even see have a chance this year. So, and that may attract viewership as well. But one thing, I mean, I know that the big thing that we're going to talk about here in a moment is kind of how the show ended. But one thing I wanted to mention that I thought was just a horrible decision was, I mean, it kind of ties in what I said before about like the idea of how many eyes they want to see this program. I don't understand why, like this year and even some last year, like why pull the clips from the nominees, like when they're announcing movies and acting, mainly the acting and movie awards. Like, why would you not include clips for all of those nominees? You know, when you're telling me that Laura Dern is announcing the best supporting actor pool, and instead of showing clips of how powerful these performances are or interesting these performances are, I'm going to listen to her tell them what she thought of their performance, you know, and that's kind of how all the acting categories went. You know, Reese Witherspoon telling people what she thought of their, like, I understand like the idea of a peer talking to you about their take on something, but I mean, it comes off as like completely insincere. And, you know, to an average person watching this, it's like, what the fuck do I want to hear Laura Dern talking to Daniel Kaluuya about, you know, Fred Hampton? Like, she shouldn't be the one doing that.
Yeah, no,
you know, it's like
silly.
Put the guy's clip on the screen and show how amazing he was in that movie.
Right.
And then let somebody be like, oh man, I didn't see that movie. 1, he looks amazing. 2, he won. And 3, his acceptance speech was great. So like, I'm going to watch that movie now. And they only get 2/3 of that equation by not having the clip. And that's the entry point to me. And it really bothered me that like so many of these categories just don't have clips anymore. And I mean, I'm a clips guy. Like, show me the clips. It just gets me jazzed up for the category. And for people that haven't seen the movies, it's the start.
I want to see a wild 10-second piece of someone's most dramatic moment in the movie taken completely out of context.
Absolutely.
I want to see somebody like screaming or crying or rolling in the dirt. No, it is. I do think I think it's just like maybe, I mean, we look at who produced the show this year. There's this kind of inside Hollywood aspect to it. I do think there is a sort of like, we kind of need to tell them like, we like certain things about the awards shows. We like the clip montages. We like to see a second or two of the movie. You know, like just because people making, I don't know, there again, this is back to this thing of it really doesn't matter. No one should really care. But there is a certain thing about the years that everybody talks about it being a fun show, or there's certain things that make it work. And I don't know, things that people look forward to. Those montages can be cheesy, but I think people look forward to seeing clips from the movies and edited together in an interesting way. And also like, you know, those little things, like I'm trying to think of like things that people talk about the next day. Back in the day, like Billy Crystal's little opening things where he would do little jokes about all the movies. You know, it's like, yes, corny.
Yeah, absolutely corny.
But for a lot of people, that's their introduction to some of these movies, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think if the show's not reaching out to those people who are kind of learning about the movies from this show, and that used to be the case. A lot of people are going to see these movies, you know, back
exactly
like in the wake of the Oscars. So it's a little bit weird to not provide context, to act like everybody's a movie buff and knows all about it. But I don't know. I think that like some people, like I said, have seemed to really like what feels like to them a more streamlined show, but it did not feel more streamlined to me because it felt like there was nothing to kind of move things along. They just kind of took out the stuff that used to mark the time for me. And also they changed the order of the awards in a way that led to some kind of dead spells or just areas where, again, you can feel viewership dropping off, where you're like, are people really that interested in these awards? So I don't know. I guess we'll get to that now, right? Should we talk about any of the wins or losses that really stuck with us before we get to the big final category that I guess might be our kind of wrap up topic for this?
I would just say like the to start the show, even changing, you know, like historically starting with like the supporting acting categories. You know, I think that's an opportunity to start the show with a star. You know, not that Regina King's not a star and announcing screenplay awards, but you know, imagine having the show start with Brad Pitt presenting an award. Like that's the start of a show, you know, and the show started that way. So that was a kind of like a reconfiguration of categories right from the jump. So you kind of saw that they were going to do a lot of changes. But win wise, I mean, like I really liked Another Round, so I was really happy to see that win the international feature, and I thought his acceptance speech was great. Thomas Vinterberg, and I like the Emerald Fennell winning original screenplay, which was again one of the top awards at the top of the show. Daniel Kaluuya, Chloe Zhao, Daniel Kaluuya. Again, like just the diversity is. Oh my god, he killed me, man.
I was going to ask you guys what your favorite speech was, but then I was like,
god.
Wait, what other speech is there?
that was.
Yeah, he was, man. He's just that guy, man. Like every time you see him, you know, on shows, on podcasts, on, you know, talk shows, whatever. I just love him. He's just so.
Even on SNL, I don't know if you
just
saw him.
Genuine, you know,
he
like
was kind of plugged in a way that hosts sometimes show up and they don't seem like they're engaged. He really seemed like he was. Again, I haven't seen him be that kind of live wire. I mean, I guess I've seen him be a live wire in a sense in movies, but he often is playing characters that are sort of reserved or kind of tortured. And so it, you know, just seeing him show different colors, I think is yeah, it's awesome. And it's just fun. And he's the kind of star you like to see have a funny, memorable moment like that. And I've heard so many people talking about that speech. Anyway, I'm trying to think of other wins that really stuck with me. I mean, you know, what's weird is there's this weird backlash that starts towards some of these movies. Like I feel like Nomadland I've started to see people taking it apart because of it being kind of pro Amazon, which I honestly didn't get that from the movie. I know they had a lot of cooperation from Amazon in making the movie, but I didn't think the movie depicted the the seasonal workers at Amazon's existence in a particularly rosy way. I thought it was very truthful, but I've seen people criticizing the fact that like, oh, the people sitting down together to have like a happy lunch, that doesn't happen. And I was like, how the fuck do you know people don't sit down and have a nice conversation over lunch? People are still people. Weird. And also, I don't think that movie romanticized this life, but I saw so many people saying, I mean, again, so many people, a handful of people on a couple of threads that were like saying, and I was like, okay, I guess I don't quite get it. Cause I thought that movie was like bracingly non-judgmental in a positive or a negative way in terms of how it treated its subjects. But I like seeing a movie like that win that I thought was, or win big awards, you know, just that like I thought it had something interesting going on in it, even though it is kind of the picture of the Oscar movie. And I do think it's interesting that Chloe Zhao is now she's got a big MCU movie coming out and she's an Oscar-winning director. I don't think that's happened to anybody yet.
Can't wait to see that in the trailer for the
well
Eternals.
Also just like, does that mean her leverage in that, you know, they supposedly already gave her a lot of leeway to make the movie she wanted to make, and now I almost feel like she gets to go in there and say, you know, if there's any editing left to be done, she and Kevin Feige, I guess Kevin Feige he's got an Oscar for Black Panther, right? Does he have a producer's Oscar for that? I guess not. He didn't win Best Picture.
No, not for picture.
What did he win for?
Was it like costume design or hair and makeup or one of those craft categories, or multiple ones, I think actually. But I don't think he
doesn't really have one. So yeah, she gets to come in. She should just like put it on a chain around her neck when they're talking about reshoots or whatever. But no, but that's cool to see. But I mean, I don't know. That was just like something I almost kind of expected it. I guess the big award we're leading up to is one where people sort of expected something that I don't know if people had any real reason to expect it to go a certain way. But based on putting the acting lead actor category last, it seemed like they were building up to a big moment where we would stop and take note of the passing of Chadwick Boseman, who I don't know. Again, I never heard that he was a favorite. I just think it was one of those things that people started to think felt right.
He was definitely a favorite.
That he was, but I mean, like for reasons beyond the performance, which was also great, but like the fact that there are other great performances in that category and people might like to see win. I think there was just a general feeling towards the idea of, yes, let's celebrate this man. You know, like it just would have felt good. And I think that it's still weird for the Academy to sort of expect that and to structure the ceremony around that, and also to kind of rob him in a way of the moment maybe he should have had somewhere else in the ceremony of remembering him. So I don't know. Let's talk about that. How do you feel about the lead actor category? And I don't know that we ever talked much about Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. What did you think of Chadwick's performance in that?
I mean, he's incredible.
Yeah. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. He's just, I mean, he's a beast. I mean, him and Viola Davis are both incredible in that movie. It's a very worthy performance of a nomination. And I mean, I think like in general, I mean, for a while, I mean, he actually was the front runner. I mean, like he'd won a lot of the awards at like the Critics Associations, and his wife, you know, was present in a lot of them, accepting on his behalf. And it was like, I think that's why they really tried to bank on this big moment at the end of the show. That just completely backfired, and was the opposite intended ending for a show like this. You know, like you have a presenter who Joaquin Phoenix is like, not the most charismatic person to have on the stage to kind of end the show to begin with. Yeah. But then when you give the award to Anthony Hopkins, who isn't there and isn't able to zoom in because he was not able to go to one of the satellite centers. And, you get his picture on the screen and Joaquin accepts the award on the Academy's behalf. I mean, what the fuck is that? Like, that's the most anticlimactic ending to an Oscars probably ever that I know of, and probably maybe ever. Like you're used to seeing not only his picture a thing because like you have the whole production, the director, that everybody's there celebrating and it's a big thing, and the host comes back up and is like, thanks for watching. You get Joaquin Phoenix like, thanks, I'm accepting this on his
You're
behalf.
making me
like,
feel weird thinking
just
about
saying
it.
It, right?
It was
it's
just
just
so awkward.
weird.
It was so awkward. It was so awkward. And what's weird is like, as great as Chadwick Boseman is in that movie, it's like, what could mess this up? It's like, okay, well, there's this dark horse, Anthony Hopkins in a career best performance, possibly, and it's like, I don't know that before I saw that movie, it wasn't really on my radar how great he was going to be in that. And I think we've all gotten kind of used to him and maybe a little bored with some of his tricks or something. So it was like something new to see him in something that really can surprise you. But I mean, I think, I don't know, the dynamism of what Chadwick Boseman is doing in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is something different. But I mean, it's honestly, you could say these two performances kind of go head to head in terms of just the actor's toolbox. What can an actor do? Where can an actor take you? Different ways of doing it, but similar power to them, of just you feeling sort of wrung out at the end of both of those movies. And they're both reasonably short movies, which is, for Oscar movies, they're around 90 minutes. That's pretty rare. I don't know. It's like, I think it would have just felt nice to have that like sort of victory lap for him and to have people speaking about him and all that. And yeah, it did make it a very strange thing. And also it kind of makes it strange for Anthony Hopkins, because now he's kind of accepting the award, but also kind of apologizing that it didn't go to Chadwick Boseman. I don't know. It was just a very weird feeling. I mean, what's the I guess the Moonlight La La Land, what was the name of the movie? That was the last time I felt this weird at the end of a show. But what you're saying, Steve, at least then you had all the people from the movie that won up there saying like, oh, it was our moment, we got to have it for a second. This time it really was like, okay, well, folks, have a good evening. There was just like nothing to end on. It was very, very strange.
What did you think of it, Ron? I mean, like, how did you feel as that broadcast went off?
Well, I watched the pre-show, which had like a 15-minute thing about Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, me too.
It was intense and it was long, and I was like, man, this is a chunk out of this thing, so it felt even weirder. So like, yeah,
you're right. That's a good point. Yeah,
that adds context to it. So like, sure, I mean, it was awkward, but it was way more awkward if you saw how frequently, and then everybody that had an interview was pretty much like, yeah, I love this thing, but Chadwick Boseman could. The interviewer kept saying it over and over again. So it was cemented in my head that he would have maybe won, or I wanted him to win. And then for it to fall flat the way that it did, like it was rough. Yeah, it's rough. Like
good,
fully edited, beautiful clips of his wife speaking, people talking about him, clips of all his movies. I was like, I want to see it. Oh boy, I want to see him win.
And in hindsight, that's almost like a tell, because like, that's a piece there that they can control. It's like the pre-show, and like we can do this like great, highly produced thing, but we're taking a risk, and they knew it going into it that we're gonna move this category to the end, and the producers don't know who the winners are, when they roll to the end of the show, obviously.
Right.
So I mean, what a risk, but I mean, I think that's probably calculated in that, like, we had this amazingly produced package in the pre-show, which I agree was great. It was a really, really nice tribute to him. But then when you get to the ceremony and like, they have the in memoriam section, which flew through at like a ridiculous pace. And like, you ended on him and you're like, oh man, this is, goddamn, that's right. This is horrible. And then you're like, oh my God, they're doing that category at the end. Like immediately I had like a feeling in my stomach, like, oh my God, like what if he doesn't win this award? This award show is going to end like on a horrible note.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it happened, it's like, oh, of course, like what the fuck? Yeah. And you're right, John. Like it's really not fair to Anthony Hopkins at all. Like I feel horrible. I don't feel horrible for him. He's fucking Anthony Hopkins.
No,
but like, but you do, I do not like the idea that like in what could be his best performance in his career and, and a deserved award, that, let's be frank, like the actor's body of the Academy votes on who wins. So like of their peers, like, he won the award. So, I mean, that's a fact. We're never going to see what numbers are or how close that race was, but I'm
Did
sure
you hear
it was
the metric though
close.
that several people have said though that they just voted their heart. They were like, I'm going to celebrate this or that because it was one of those, a lot of people assumed that Chadwick Boseman was going to win. So I think it's one of those times where, and I'm not quite sure how that works out, that people would say, I really admired him. Like a lot of people wanted him to win because they thought it was right, but they also thought, well, I really admired Anthony Hopkins' performance. So, I mean, supposedly there's some people reporting that they voted for Anthony Hopkins because they liked that performance better, but that if they were doing that because they just assumed, it's that kind of thing that you hear about with people using their vote in a strange way. Yeah. But I don't quite understand the logic of that myself, but it still seems like that person saying they would have preferred to vote for Anthony Hopkins, but that even someone who voted for Anthony Hopkins would say, who's going to win? They would say, probably Chadwick Boseman, and he probably should, so it's an odd thing. But I think that I watched that movie again, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and it's like, man, it's like he's just on fire. I mean, that movie feels so much like a play, and the rhythm of it, I don't know, that feat of acting is always impressive to me when it's like got that rapid fire kind of dialogue and it's these long scenes. Everyone's great in that movie, actually. But there's no question that he just flays your skin off in that one. Like he just does everything he can do. And after seeing him in a couple of movies where he kind of hangs back, like into Five Bloods and Black Panther, he's not doing everything he can do. He's kind of letting other people steal the scene. But that's not the case in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom at all.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, had they had the award in place where it normally would have been and still the upset happened, it'd still be like, holy hell, what?
Yeah, right.
But just the idea that like it was such a risk to shake the last three awards up. It just was such a weird, unfortunate, like just all around decision, it seems. And for what to me was a not great ceremony, it just like put the punctuation on the end of it. I'm like, I'm done with this right now. Like, just get me out of this one and I'll look forward to next year.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That said, there was a lot
of predictions for next year, guys.
Yeah. I'm saying that said, it was interesting. The year, that was primarily, kind of victim to a pandemic, in terms of what came out that was eligible. The diversity and the winners and the inclusivity and just like the variety of films that were nominated. Yeah. There's some amazing movies that came out this year. So, I mean, I'm really still celebrate the variety of films that we had to choose from to watch. And I mean, amongst the ones that were nominated, there are just some amazing movies. So, I think regardless of how great or not so great the ceremony was, if there's movies that were nominated, you had any interest in, mostly I think everything is available in some way on streaming. So, seek out some of these movies. If you haven't seen movies like Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is on Netflix, or Nomadland, which is on Hulu. Most of these movies are on PVOD, if not on the streaming services directly. Like, find them and watch them because, like, in a lot of ways, these are some of the best movies that came out this year. So, support those. And, hopefully next year, we have a better ceremony, and I have no doubt we'll have a even bigger variety of films to kind of watch and, see how they play out at the Academy Awards next year. But I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted to say about the Oscars before we wrap this up?
Not time.
Ronald?
No, nothing from me, man.
All right, cool. So that's going to be the podcast. So again, Mortal Kombat, we talked about, that's on HBO Max and in theaters. If that is of interest to you, John, you have to check it out and let us know what you think of it over on the HBO Max side. And Ronald mentioned Best Summer Ever, which is on PVOD. That was a movie that we mentioned briefly and we saw at South by Southwest, which is available now too. We both recommend that. And again, just to kind of promote these movies that were at the Oscars, whether they were winners, losers, or, anywhere in between. Just there's some great movies. I think Another Round was great. I saw that kind of late. But if you're a fan of like Mads Mikkelsen, I'd recommend checking it out, especially because the day after the Oscars, they mentioned that Leonardo DiCaprio's production company won the rights to remake it. And apparently he's going to maybe be starring in the Mads role. So I don't know. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, anything else, just look up those movies and find them on some sort of streaming option, because there's a lot of great options in there to check out. The podcast available on all the major podcast platforms. You can go to movieschmovie.com, which now goes to this great landing page that we have on Podlink that kind of shows you all of those platforms and kind of lets you jump right into them, whether you're on your mobile device, if you're on if you're on your mobile device in the browser, it'll take you right to the app if you have it, or take you to the App Store so you can download it and take you right to our podcast so you can listen or subscribe. And if you have YouTube, we also release videos with these podcasts now every week. So Movie Schmovie or youtube.com/Movie Schmovie. You can subscribe there and hit the bell so you get alerts every Friday when we post the video along with the podcast feed. And if you're looking for some back catalog outside of the podcast on the YouTube site, we have a series that we did for called Marvel Schmarvel, where we kind of go over the weekly episodes that come down for the Disney Plus series. So Falcon and Winter Soldier just ended last week, so you can kind of catch up on those and catch back up with us as we talk about Hulu's MODOK, which comes out in a couple weeks, and then when Loki comes out on Disney Plus, we'll be talking about that too. But yeah, we're a lot of places. If you could just find us and stick with us somewhere, that'd be great. And tell somebody that you know about it too, because that would be even better if you spread the word.
And nobody's trying to stop us, guys. I just wanted you to know.
Yeah,
Steve,
you check it out.
Yeah.
You're on lookout right at
that
the end of the
scanned.
episode.
Yeah,
You're good. You're good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but moviesmovie.com is the great place to go. Just find us wherever you prefer to listen to a podcast, and we should be there. If we're not, let us know. If you guys are good, actually, real quick, we should probably tease in a couple weeks. We're gonna have a very special episode.
Yeah,
we should start teasing this out because this is 297, and if you do math and you carry numbers like 3 episodes from now is a very important episode for this podcast. In the middle or second week, third week of May, we'll be celebrating 300 episodes and 10 years of Movie Schmovie. So we've got a fun episode planned for that. So be sure, if you're a listener of this podcast, hopefully you'll get excited for that because we got something special planned, and that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks.
And you've got time now, if you want to catch all the references, to go back and listen to all 300 episodes of the show.
Yeah. 297. I mean, I think if you do, again, the math works out. If you do that in the number of days you have between then and now, you can listen to them all, I think.
Yeah.
And you don't have anything to do. I mean, so just do that. Everything I said about the movies before, scratch it. Just listen all 296 prior episodes, and then you'll be good.
Binge listen to them.
The ultimate binge, like Netflix. I mean, nothing on Netflix is 296 episodes plus this guy. I'm just saying. But yeah, look forward to that. I know I do, and I know all of us are. So episode 300 will be pretty special in a couple weeks. But as always, thanks for listening, and you've made our day. Thanks.